Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bankruptcy Nerd Alert for September. And I have all kinds of fun doing these things. My name is Jen Lee, aka Rebel Esquire, aka a bankruptcy nerd. And I like to talk about the bankruptcy numbers, what the filings look like. It's really important for bankruptcy attorneys and those thinking about practicing bankruptcy to know where the market is heading and that kind of thing. So let's jump in to the Bankruptcy Nerd Alert for September. And we're also going to do a little bit of year to date over 2024. So let's jump into the lovely slides that I did. And I will turn off my video so that I'm not distracting anybody from the actual numbers here. So talking about September numbers, but we're also going to talk about year to date. So quarterly, actually, we're just going to do year to date over 2024. As some of you may know, I, as a bankruptcy nerd, have an online course for lawyers who want to add bankruptcy from start to finish. It's fully recorded. There is live versions of it that come up that you get free access to, and lots of bankruptcy nerd mentoring. So if you want to talk to someone who loves bankruptcy law and reviews your cases and helps you, there I am. So where are we at? I break these down. They are commercial chapter 11s. We break them down into consumer, individuals, and that kind of thing as well. So the consumer chapter 11s are the ones, the business reorganizations that we're looking at. So from September 24 to 2025, overall commercial chapter 11s were at a 3% increase. Subchapter 5, however, which subchapter 5, if you're not familiar, is a subsection of chapter 11 for small businesses. It came out in February of 2020, right before COVID hit. And it is more streamlined than a regular chapter 11. And the idea is to make it a little bit, hopefully streamlined, less expensive for smaller businesses who may not be able to afford a full chapter 11 reorganization. The increase there was 40% from September 2024 to September 2025. Now, that may seem like a big number. You also have to look into the background of what happened in 2024. Was there something in 2025? Lots of cases that got filed together. We're always looking at that, especially for Chapter 11's related cases. And what oftentimes we see is there may have been very few of them filed because people were still hanging on to forbearances for EIDL, or they may have been hanging on to other types of aid that was out there. And so when that low filing in September 2024 happened, it looks like a huge increase. It was a fairly significant, it went from like 120 cases to 170 subchapter 5s, but it was a significant increase. But just pay attention to those numbers because you can make headlines say whatever you want. I am seeing a lot of the small businesses, though, that are distressed right now. Getting into consumer chapter 7, this is where we saw the most increase, the individual filings from September 2024 to 2025, 19% increase. I am hearing that from a lot of bankruptcy attorneys nationwide, a lot of organizations that deal with bankruptcy. And it seems like people are booking out a couple weeks now for consults or longer because the demand is really picking up. So the 19% increase was fairly significant there. And I think based on the calls, and if you look back at the March and April bankruptcy nerd alerts, we were talking about it back then, that come about 6 months out or so. Also keep in mind that bankruptcy does go through cycles, especially when it comes to individuals during the year. So some months will be lower, usually the summer months. December tends to be a lower month because people are usually not thinking about bankruptcy around the holidays. And then other months tend to be higher. September does tend to be a higher month overall because kids go back to school and people are focusing on it a little bit more than they were during the summer. So just things to keep in mind if you're looking at bankruptcy trends. Chapter 13. And Chapter 13 is the reorganization plan, only available for individuals. Businesses, entities cannot file Chapter 13. There was a 10% increase in September 2024 to 2025. And I think when we get to the overall numbers year to date, there's some interesting numbers that come in here. But remember, for Chapter 13, the debtor has to have income coming in order to propose a plan. And so if unemployment goes up or people don't have regular income, you'll see Chapter 13s go down even if an economy is not doing well. So just putting that out there. Total individual filings were a 16% increase, and that's combining the Chapter 7 individuals with the Chapter 13 individuals. There were a couple Chapter 11 individuals, but I didn't include those in here. A 16% increase overall from September 2024 to September 2025. And like I said, the reason why I compare year over year is because I want to look at the annual filings versus month to month. There may be a reason why one month is way higher than the previous month and that kind of thing. So total filings. Total filings for September 2024 to September 25 was a 16% increase overall for total filings. That's all chapters, all everything. So a pretty significant increase over last year. Getting into more fun stuff. The year to date. So the ABI did do a webinar on this on Friday, September 12th. I believe it is up on their website, but they did talk about year to date. And the year to date numbers through September is 10% increase for total bankruptcy filings over 2024. Individual filings was the 11% increase. Commercial filings, a 4% increase. Chapter 7 filings were the 15% increase. And Chapter 13 was a 4% increase. So all of the numbers are trending up for every chapter of bankruptcy, but you'll see the Chapter 7 ones, as I was talking about, tends to be the one that strikes first when consumers start struggling. With Chapter 13 having a 4% increase, there are fewer Chapter 13s in general filed than Chapter 7. It's usually about a 75% to 25% ratio for Chapter 7s and 13s. And so looking at that increase, again, you have to have income to propose a Chapter 13 plan. And if there is no income coming in, then Chapter 13s tend to be a little bit lower. But something to pay attention to is those year over year filings year to date, and then what consults coming in look like and what other filings are looking like. If you practice commercial, I do focus a lot on the consumer side of things. I look at the overall economic trends, but we are still seeing a lot of small businesses, especially, that are struggling. Upcoming live trainings. So here's where I get to have fun with teaching bankruptcy and nerdy things. I do have an advanced Chapter 13 training coming up on October 24th. It is a 3-hour training that afternoon. If you are interested in hearing more about that, just email me, jen@lawyersuccessnetwork.com. That is a fairly new one. We've delved into some Chapter 13 as one-offs before, but this will be an advanced Chapter 13 workshop talking about plan provisions, speculations. I get into a little bit of my Chapter 13 plan magic in the main course, but the advanced Chapter 13 is really digging into what we're seeing with motions and plan provisions and things like that. And then on November 14th and November 15th, I am going to do a live version of my Building a Bankruptcy Practice from Start to Finish. This is basically a duplicate of the recorded, but some people like to do it live or have it set up on the calendar. It is 10 hours over 2 days. It is recorded. You get access to the recordings, and you also get access to like the full online course as part of it. But I have heard from some people that they like the on their calendar entry to have 5 hours each day set aside to do this, because it takes a lot to do a self-paced course sometimes. So those are 2 things that are coming up. If you're interested in either one of those, please reach out to me. I do offer deals. I often put in mentorship for your first couple of cases and things like that. So reach out to me if you're interested in that. If you already have bought the course, you automatically get access to the live version, and you'll get an email asking if you want to attend the live version. It's done in a webinar format, not a Zoom meeting format. And you can be anonymous when it comes to asking questions, which I like to emphasize, because there aren't any dumb questions, but sometimes you don't want everyone else to know the question you're asking. So that's bankruptcy from start to finish. I am Jen Lee, your bankruptcy nerd, and love to talk about bankruptcy numbers, nerdy things like that. If you have any suggestions for things you want to hear about when it comes to debt and credit, or you want to learn about adding bankruptcy to your firm, reach out to me. This has been your Bankruptcy Nerd Alert for September 2025.